They told us the Atlas breakup was ordinary. Thermal stress, brittle stone, a tired comet's cousin coming apart along an old seam. And they told the public it happened far away. They lied about the distance. They lied about the shape. And they lied about what we saw threading itself through that debris field like a thought refusing to die. I'm telling you because you were there in the control room the night I stood up too fast and knocked my headset off. You asked me if I needed water and I shook my hand like it was numb and couldn't hold a cup. I said I was fine. I wasn't. No one is. After you look at a map of vacuum and realize something with no hands left you a message. We weren't supposed to see this. My name doesn't matter, but the job does. Orbital debris dynamics. My little island in the ocean of flight dynamics. I can tell you how a paint fleck whispers against a solar panel and leaves a scar you only notice when the panel stops charging a fraction too slow. I can look at a smear on a long exposure and tell you whether it's a loose bolt from a stage separation, a spring that decided to retire mid-flight, or a meteor that never meant you harm. My father taught me parabolas with a flashlight on a garage wall. My mother taught me to listen to instruments more carefully than I listen to people, because instruments lie less and forgive more. The first time the name Atlas crossed my desk, it wasn't a headline. It was a catalog entry, C20XXA1, Atlas, from a survey that saved more Saturday nights than any of us get credit for. A faint visitor. Nothing dramatic. The kind of thing grad students cut their teeth on, not the kind of thing directors of anything say on television. The story that lived in public was simple. Outgassing, sunlight, a few degrees of heat, a few degrees of grief, a brittle neck, a crack like a smile, and then snow. The sky snowed rocks. We ran the model. Fragments fan out along a cone. You've seen the diagrams. Vectors, standard deviations, a halo of probabilities around a path that never intersects Earth because space is mostly luck. One of my interns called it asteroid confetti. You laughed. But confetti doesn't move like a flock. I'm jumping ahead. This is what happened in the minutes you'll never get from press releases. At 02:13 UTC, 2 arrays lit up almost in chorus. One in Hawaii, catching a glint that shouldn't have been there. One in Chile, seeing a dip in a star we weren't observing on purpose. The Hawaiian glint carried a phase shift. Tiny. Nothing you'd show a dean. A stutter in brightness like someone tapping a teaspoon against glass in a quiet kitchen. The Chilean dip had shoulders, which is not a phrase you learn in school. Shoulders mean structure. Shoulders mean something opaque, with edges that aren't smooth, crossed a light, and told the light to be patient. At 02:21, the James Webb chatter went from rumor to request. Don't ask me how we pivot something like that. We don't pivot, we plead, we bargain, we beg. You don't point Webb at the moon, and you don't point it at a snowstorm unless you want to read static. But somebody with clearance bigger than my hope whispered, non-thermal anomaly, and the mid-infrared plots slid across a screen like a heartbeat deciding to stutter. A shadow that wasn't a shadow. A halo that refused to glow. The memo used the phrase James Webb Telescope Discovery like a prayer and like a warning. I told you once in another life that I did a winter at the South Pole with the Ice Cube people. Neutrinos are the perfect audience. They pass through everything. They don't applaud. That winter taught me the difference between silence and attention. At 02:37, while we pretended to stay only in the optical, Ice Cube lit up with low-energy cascades from a direction that made no sense. Neutrinos don't care about our rocks and our confetti. They cross your heart without asking. But the pattern had a rhythm. 6 minutes, then 6, then 5.9, then 6 again, like a metronome with a human hand on it. Not music, but intention. We weren't supposed to cross that data with the optical. We did. The map that resolved would have gotten me fired if I hadn't had a friend in Area 51. No, we don't call it that, but I'm too tired to pretend the desert is only sand. I had done a device test there that taught photons to behave like they were married. Entanglement is a neat trick until it feels like a mirror. The device engineers called our last round the Area 51 experiment, and I hated them a little for enjoying the phrase too much. It stuck because it worked. The Atlas debris field wasn't random. The fragments weren't scattering. They were arranging. Are you breathing? Good. Because this is the part where even the veterans forget to. We stack plots on plots. You know that. We love layers. The top layer, optical. Beneath, infrared. Beneath that, neutrino events mapped like freckles. Beneath that, radar echo. You shouldn't be able to get that clean at that range. I laid them like a sandwich and pressed. The spread between them narrowed. The noise walked off the stage. What stayed in the center wasn't a line. It was a ring. 12 bright nodes, equidistant if you measured not in kilometers but in time. A dodecagon traced by stones with no motive. A clock with no hands. We were not supposed to see this. At 0258, a private antenna in New Mexico, a dish retired from Goldstone, bought by a university that didn't know it was buying a mixed marriage of steel and memory, sent us a packet because an old man with a volunteer badge refused to go home. "It's real, isn't it?" he typed. "The hum?" He could feel the dish vibrate. There was no wind. The desert was inside a held breath. I said, "Call me," and I didn't hit send because something else moved. One of the 12 nodes, let's call it Stone 7, nudged. An impulse with no obvious mechanism, a change in velocity we couldn't blame on outgassing, radiation pressure, or an angry god. The vector wasn't random. It was toward a point a few thousand kilometers off the ecliptic, a point we had cataloged 5 years ago when the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter returned a Doppler residual no one could file. A tone in the noise. We'd called it the door, as a joke we were tired of explaining. You see the shape forming, don't you? At 0311, my boss, the one with the tray of cold coffee and a pen he chewed like pen caps grow on trees, said, "Let's call Nevada." He meant the entanglement team. He meant the harpsichord-looking thing we'd used to teach a sliver of Apollo crystal to answer to a word that wasn't a word. He meant we were about to sing to rocks. We argued. We lost. We always do when the men in quiet shoes decide curiosity is permission. The Nevada device hummed. I felt it in my teeth. We fed it a phase and an amplitude built from the mid-infrared shoulder and the neutrino metronome, a dirty song with a clean heart. We aimed it at nothing because nothing is connected to everything when you ask it right. Stone 7 answered. It brightened fractionally. It changed its tumble like a drunk man finding his feet. Then it moved again toward the point we knew and refused to admit we knew. I looked at you. You looked at me like you were asking whether this is how it feels when you cross an invisible line and a room you thought was empty introduces itself. At 0322, the James Webb rumor turned into a picture, not a press release. A gray smear that only the people who spend their lives on gray smears love. I loved it. The halo that wasn't a halo had edges, not circular, not smooth, 12-sided. Something in my chest paced itself. I'd seen that geometry somewhere a human hand cannot arrange. Antarctica's secret base, someone said softly, like a joke that isn't a joke. Concordia sublevel. The door in the ice that isn't ice, the one we found with a gravimeter and opened with a ritual we pretended was science because ritual makes us superstitious in predictable ways. The dodecagon in the ice, the dodecagon under the dust, the dodecagon now hanging in vacuum, spun from the bodies of a broken visitor. How many times can the same shape teach you its name before you say it back? We had a problem. The debris field was about to drift behind a glare we couldn't see through. We had 38 minutes of clean geometry left. We had clearance to nudge. "Just the one," my boss said. "Stone 7, a tap." We tapped. All 12 moved. Not much. Enough. A whisper of delta V that added up to a sentence. They settled into a ring a human eye could have picked out if the human had been patient and bored, 12 points dancing around a center that was not a center because there was nothing there we could taste. We sent a second phase, A third. The ring thickened. It looked like a throat deciding to swallow. I know how this sounds. It sounds like I'm telling you a ghost story about rocks. I'm not. I'm telling you that something arranged a choir from a car crash and then waited for the conductor to admit he hadn't learned the song. At 03:49, the neutrino metronome skipped. Ice Cube hiccuped. A cascade rose like a hand from under the world. The timing matched the ring's brightening. Nevada's device drifted in phase, like the crystal in its heart remembered the last time it had been asked to do this. In Houston, an Apollo vial gave up a long-held breath that did not match temperature. At Goldstone, the dish's shadow shifted half an inch in no wind. In Hawaii, the Terminator hissed like a radio looking for a station and almost crying when it found one. Mare Tranquillitatis glowed. This is the line I never wanted to write. The edge of the Sea of Tranquility took a color that doesn't have a name because humans don't see in that band unless their blood is full of terror. A thin, dark ring pulsed. We'd seen that ring once before, in a frame no one screened, in a tilt of a camera someone pretended was an accident. Apollo's missing footage wasn't missing. It was quarantined, like a pet you're afraid will love strangers more than you. You asked me what we were looking at. I said the only honest thing, a lock noticing we've learned to trace its edges. Someone in the room said, Area 51 experiment confirms lunar resonance. Someone else said, for the love of God, don't write that down. You kept your hand on the console. I kept mine on the edge of the table because my legs were learning a gravity from a place with no mass. We weren't supposed to see this, but we watched the ring of Atlas pieces answer the ring under the lunar dust. The phase between them tightened like a zipper. The neutrinos kept time. The infrared whispered where the visible screamed. For 1 full minute, 60.03 seconds by the machine, a lifetime by the heart, the debris field became a lens. It bent light that had no business bending. It showed us a thing behind it we couldn't have seen otherwise. It showed us Earth. Not a beautiful blue marble, not a postcard. Earth in a dozen almosts. Clouds left 10 minutes longer over the Amazon, and the river made a different choice. A hurricane's eye found a warmth that wasn't there and walked 30 miles inland to look at a city that never had its name. A contrail over the Atlantic wrote a line I read like a word, and then forgot, because your head hides mercy from you when it has to. A boy on a beach in Florida looked up at a sky where the aurora reached his fingertips, and he laughed, and the sound threaded itself into a lattice you could climb if you were a god made of patience. Earth as she is, and as she could be, and as she almost was, all laid like transparent film on a light box 18 minutes before dawn. We saw the archive. Not the moons alone. The same archive that lives under the Antarctic ice door, like a bruise that learned to sing. The same archive that answered the Area 51 instrument like a dog deciding your family when you aren't yet. The same pattern we called superstition when our instruments were too new to be humble. I don't think Atlas broke. I think it was broken, or tuned, or recruited. I think the universe is sometimes kind in a way that looks like cruelty. It takes a thing that would have flown past us and teaches it to hold a shape long enough to make us look. The aftermath is always paperwork. We filed, we scrubbed, we rephrased. Transient photometric anomaly associated with Atlas fragment ensemble. We buried the neutrino timing under a graph we said was interference. We redacted the word dodecagon until it looked like a family of graves. We told the public what they could live with. No impact risk, no threat, nothing to see. We closed the loop. At 06:02, after the adrenaline burned off and left me hollow, I walked outside into the parking lot with its corporate trees and its polite lamps. I looked up. The moon was low and thin. A plane crossed her like a thought you can't afford. I put my hand out without meaning to, as if I could place my finger on the little dimple of Mare Tranquillitatis, as if I could feel the ring under the dust with skin. I felt nothing. Then I felt something. Attention, not from the sky to me. From me to the sky, reflected back. That night, someone in Nevada pinged me a screenshot with no subject. The device's phase walk had stabilized in a way the equations don't predict unless the device isn't closed. "It's still listening," the engineer typed, and then deleted the message, and then sent a smiley by accident, and then wrote, "Forget that. Pretend I didn't write." At the South Pole, a friend sent a photo of the aurora reaching lower than it should and said, "If the Atlas thing was nothing, why does nothing feel like a door?" At Goldstone, the old volunteer was found on a bench under the dish, hat in his hands, eyes closed, breathing like someone counting their own ribs. I took 2 days off and went to Florida to stand on a beach that has learned the names of rockets. I watched an empty patch of air shimmer like heat over concrete. A pilot training for a job he couldn't tell his mother he had tipped his wing over the shimmer and later wrote an incident report without adjectives. The Atlantic didn't care. It had enough names. I walked back to my rental car and didn't drive for 20 minutes because I was shaking too hard to trust distance. You asked me why we can't tell the truth. Because the truth is not a press release. It's a rhythm. If you're careless with rhythm, you can open things you don't know how to close. The Atlas debris field wasn't just a pretty geometry, it was a rehearsal. The moon sang back. Antarctica answered through ice. Area 51's instrument nodded like a dog. James Webb saw a shadow cast by intention. We tuned a choir out of falling stones, and it made a lens of possible worlds. You can turn that into marketing. Atlas debris field. We weren't supposed to see this. You can stuff James Webb Telescope discovery, and Antarctica secret base, and Area 51 experiment, and asteroid Atlas impact into your tags, and watch the algorithm purr. Do it. Maybe that's how the song spreads, not with paper, but with someone's hands shaking over a keyboard at 3 a.m. And someone else at a bus stop seeing a thumbnail that looks like a warning, and a kid in a country I will never visit lifting his head to a sky he has been told is indifferent and feeling for a hair of a second, watched by something that doesn't want to eat him. I left a note in a place no one checks, a marker in the data, a tiny phase skew, half a second every 12 minutes on a sensor that loops back into itself inside a clean room that has never known dirt. If someone sings the right word into it, the skew will align. A ring will form, 12 small lines, a clock with no hands. I am not a prophet. I am an engineer who has learned to love friction enough to trust it. The universe does not need us to decode it. It needs us to admit when it has put its hand on our shoulder. Atlas didn't break to scare us. It broke to teach us what a lock looks like when it's not afraid of being opened. I'll be in the control room again next week. The men in quiet shoes will pretend our papers are full of nouns. They'll forget about verbs. I won't. I'll remember the way Stone 7 found its place like a boy who wandered off at a fair and then saw his mother and ran without looking at his feet. I'll remember the ring. I'll remember the lens. I'll remember the almosts that tasted like salt and dust and forgiveness. You asked me whether I think the door will open again. It never closed. It's us who shut our eyes. Lean closer. Don't look around. The room is loud with wrong words and right fears. I will give you the one thing I learned when the debris sang and the neutrinos kept time and the moon wrote a number on my tongue. We weren't supposed to see this. We were supposed to listen. And when we did, the universe did not shout. It whispered the secret it tells the dark when the dark thinks no one is awake. Nothing that loves you is truly far.